The whispers started the moment Captain Sarah Chen walked through the gates of Fort Bragg. She wasn't wearing a uniform, just a simple black dress, modest heels and a leather jacket that had seen better days. Her hair, once pulled back in regulation standards, now fell loose around her shoulders. No rank, no insignia, no identification. To anyone watching, she looked like a civilian, a guest, maybe someone's wife or sister, but she wasn't. 3 years ago, Sarah Chen had been one of the most decorated intelligence officers in the United States Army. She'd served 2 tours in Afghanistan, 1 in Iraq, and spent 18 months in classified operations that would never see the light of day. She spoke 4 languages fluently. She'd saved lives. She'd taken them too when she had no other choice. Then, in a single night, everything had been ripped away. Now she stood outside the base auditorium, watching soldiers in dress uniforms file past her. Some glanced her way with polite curiosity. Others didn't look at all. None of them recognized her. Why would they? She'd been erased. "Excuse me, ma'am." A young MP approached, his hand resting on his belt. "This ceremony is for military personnel and authorized guests only." "Can I see your invitation?" Sarah reached into her jacket and pulled out a cream-colored envelope. The MP opened it, scanned the contents, and his eyebrows rose slightly. "You're Sarah Chen?" "That's right." He looked her up and down, confused. "It says here you're receiving a commendation today. So I'm told. But you're not." He stopped himself, clearly uncomfortable. "I mean, are you prior service?" The question stung, but Sarah kept her face neutral. "Something like that." The MP handed back the invitation, still uncertain. "Okay, ma'am, head on in. Seating is on the left." Sarah walked past him into the auditorium. It was already half full. Soldiers sat in neat rows, their uniforms crisp and perfect. Family members clustered in the back, beaming with pride. Everyone belonged, everyone except her. She found a seat in the far corner, away from the crowd. As she sat down, 2 female officers in the row ahead turned around. Sarah recognized the type immediately. Career officers, mid-level rank, the kind who cared more about appearances than substance. "Did you see that woman who just walked in?" One whispered to the other, not quite quietly enough. "The one in the dress?" "Yeah, who wears black to an awards ceremony?" "Probably someone's girlfriend." "She looks lost." They giggled softly. Sarah looked down at her hands. Her nails were short, unpolished. Working hands. Scarred hands. Hands that had assembled rifles in the dark, applied pressure to bullet wounds, and typed classified reports that changed the course of operations. But these women didn't know that. They couldn't. The ceremony began with the national anthem. Sarah stood with everyone else, her hand over her heart. Muscle memory. No matter what had happened, that hadn't changed. The base commander took the podium, a colonel with silver hair and a chest full of ribbons. He began reading through the day's commendations. Bronze Stars, Meritorious Service Medals, Army Commendation Medals. One by one, soldiers marched to the front in perfect formation, received their awards, saluted, and returned to their seats. The audience clapped politely after each name. Sarah waited. Halfway through the ceremony, a major sitting 2 rows behind her leaned over to his companion. "I heard they're giving out some legacy award today," he muttered. "Something political?" "You know how it is." "Yeah," the other replied.
PR stunt.
"Probably giving a medal to some admin clerk from the 90s so they can check a diversity box. Wouldn't surprise me. Everything's about optics now." Sarah's jaw tightened. She stared straight ahead, refusing to react. The colonel continued through his list. More names. More applause. Then he paused, glancing down at his notes with an expression Sarah couldn't quite read. "Our next commendation," he said slowly, "is unusual. It concerns actions taken 3 years ago during a classified operation. Due to the sensitive nature of the mission, many details cannot be disclosed." The room quieted. Classified operations always drew attention. The recipient of this award, the colonel continued, was part of a joint task force conducting intelligence operations in a hostile region. During the course of this mission, the recipient demonstrated extraordinary valor, tactical brilliance, and complete disregard for personal safety in order to protect American lives. Sarah's heart began to pound. However, the colonel's voice dropped. Due to circumstances surrounding the conclusion of this operation, the recipient's service was terminated. No public recognition was given. No award was processed. In fact, for 3 years, this individual's contributions were completely buried. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. It has taken multiple inquiries, a congressional review, and direct intervention from the Pentagon to correct this injustice. The colonel looked up from his notes, his eyes scanning the room. Would Captain Sarah Chen please come forward? The murmuring stopped. Every head turned. Sarah stood slowly, her legs steadier than she expected. She stepped into the aisle and began the long walk to the front of the auditorium. The whispers exploded. That's her? The woman in the dress? She's not even in uniform. Wait, did he say captain? She doesn't look. Why isn't she wearing? Was this some kind of joke? The two female officers who'd mocked her earlier stared with open mouths. The major behind her sat forward, confused. The entire room buzzed with shock and disapproval. Sarah kept walking, one foot in front of the other, just like she'd done through firefights and interrogations and the worst night of her life. She reached the front and stood before the colonel. He looked at her with something that might have been respect, or maybe pity. She couldn't tell. Captain Chen, he said formally, though his voice lacked warmth. On behalf of the United States Army, Colonel, the voice came from the side entrance, deep, commanding, absolute authority. Everyone turned. A man stepped through the doorway, and the entire room snapped to attention. 4 stars gleamed on his shoulders. General Marcus Hale, commander of United States Special Operations Command, walked down the center aisle like he owned the air itself. His face was carved from stone, his eyes sharp enough to cut. He stopped directly in front of Sarah. "Stand down, Colonel," the general said quietly. "I'll take it from here." The colonel stepped back immediately, confusion written across his face. The general turned to Sarah. For a long moment, he just looked at her. Then, so quietly that only she could hear, he said, "Hello, Sarah. I'm sorry it took so long." And Sarah Chen, for the first time in 3 years, felt something crack inside her chest. General Hale didn't ask permission. He simply took the medal case from the stunned colonel's hands and opened it himself. The entire auditorium held its breath. Sarah stood at attention, though her hands trembled slightly at her sides. She hadn't seen Marcus Hale in 3 years, not since the night he'd sat across from her in a windowless room and told her that everything she'd sacrificed meant nothing, that her career was over, that she'd become a liability. Now he stood before her, 4 stars gleaming, about to pin a medal on a woman wearing no uniform. "At ease, Captain," he said softly. She relaxed her posture, but barely. "Old habits." The general's voice rose, addressing the room. 3 years ago, Captain Sarah Chen volunteered for an operation that 90% of trained operators wouldn't touch. Deep cover intelligence work in Taliban-controlled territory. No backup, no extraction plan, no safety net. The whispers stopped. Everyone listened. She spent 14 months embedded in a hostile network, feeding us information that prevented 6 major attacks on U.S. forces and saved an estimated 200 American lives. He paused, letting that number sink in. 200 soldiers came home to their families because of this woman. Sarah kept her eyes forward, but she could feel the weight of 100 stares. Her cover required her to become someone else entirely. The general continued. She couldn't carry weapons, couldn't wear a uniform, couldn't contact her family or anyone from her previous life. She had to disappear so completely that even our own intelligence community wasn't sure whose side she was on. One of the officers in the front row shifted uncomfortably, and, when her mission was compromised, General Hale's voice hardened. When enemy combatants discovered what she was and dragged her into a compound for interrogation, Captain Chen didn't break. She didn't reveal a single piece of classified information. Instead, she fought her way out, killed 3 armed hostiles with nothing but improvised weapons, and walked 17 miles through enemy territory with a broken rib and a bullet wound to reach friendly forces. Someone in the back gasped. Sarah remembered that walk. Every agonizing step, the taste of blood in her mouth, the way the desert sun had felt like knives on her skin. She'd thought she was going to die. Part of her had wanted to. But when she finally made it back, the general's tone turned cold. Certain elements within the intelligence community decided that Captain Chen's methods had been too aggressive, too violent. They questioned whether she'd exceeded her authority. They suggested that perhaps she'd become too comfortable in her cover identity, that maybe she couldn't be trusted anymore. Sarah's hands clenched into fists. So instead of being honored, General Hale said, his disgust evident, she was investigated, interrogated, treated like a suspect instead of a hero. And when the bureaucrats couldn't find any actual wrongdoing, they simply buried her, gave her a general discharge, sealed her records, pretended she'd never existed. The auditorium was completely silent now. The general turned back to Sarah and his expression softened. I was part of that decision, he said quietly. I signed the paperwork. I told myself it was necessary, that we were protecting classified methods, protecting the program. His voice dropped even lower. I was wrong. Sarah's throat tightened. She'd spent 3 years hating this man, hating everyone who'd thrown her away like garbage after she'd given them everything. It took a lot of digging, General Hale continued, and some very persistent questions from people who believed in you, to uncover the full truth. Turns out the intelligence you provided didn't just save lives during your deployment. It led to a major operation last year that dismantled an entire terrorist network. An operation that's still classified, but that fundamentally changed our strategic position in the region. He lifted the metal from its case. It caught the light gleaming. Captain Sarah Chen, his voice rang with authority now. For extraordinary heroism in combat operations, for sustained excellence in the face of extreme adversity, and for personal sacrifice far beyond the call of duty, it is my privilege to present you with the Defense Superior Service Medal. He stepped forward and pinned it to her dress, right over her heart. Then he did something that made the entire room go still. He saluted her, a 4-star general, saluting a woman in civilian clothes. Sarah's hand snapped up automatically, returning the salute. Her eyes burned, but she refused to let the tears fall. Not here. Not now. The general held the salute for a long moment, then dropped his hand. Thank you for your service, Captain. And I'm sorry we failed you. The applause started slowly. One person, then another. Then it built like a wave, crashing through the auditorium until everyone was standing clapping, some of them cheering, but Sarah barely heard it. She was looking past the general, past the crowd, to the back corner of the room where a man in a worn baseball cap stood watching. He wasn't clapping, wasn't smiling, just watching with eyes that held recognition. Her breath caught. She knew that face. The general noticed her distraction and glanced back. Someone you know? I'm not sure, Sarah whispered, but she was sure. She just couldn't believe it. The man touched 2 fingers to his cap in a small salute, then turned and walked out the back door. Excuse me, Sarah said suddenly, stepping past the general. Captain, but she was already moving, walking quickly down the center aisle. The applause faltered. People stared. The general called her name again, but she didn't stop. She pushed through the auditorium doors into the bright North Carolina sunshine. The parking lot stretched before her, mostly empty. A few scattered vehicles. No sign of the man. Looking for me? Sarah spun around. He stood near the corner of the building, hands in his pockets. Up close she could see the scars, the weathered skin, the gray in his hair that hadn't been there before. Reza, she breathed. Hello, Sarah. Her mind reeled. Reza Khan had been her primary contact during the operation. A local asset. A translator who'd risked everything to help American forces. She'd trusted him with her life a dozen times over. She'd also watched him die. You're dead, she said flatly. I saw the body. I identified you myself. You saw a body, Reza corrected gently. Not mine. That's impossible. The DNA was faked by me, with help from people who wanted me to disappear. He stepped closer. The same people who wanted you to disappear, Sarah. Her hand instinctively moved to her hip, reaching for a weapon that wasn't there. What are you talking about? Reza's expression turned grave. That operation you were on? The intelligence you gathered? It was bigger than they told you. Bigger than saving soldiers. You uncovered something that certain people didn't want uncovered. What people? The kind with more power than generals. He glanced toward the auditorium. That medal they just gave you? It's beautiful. It's also a target on your back. Sarah's blood went cold. Explain, now, not here. Reza pulled a phone from his pocket and held it out. There's one contact in this phone. Call it when you're ready to know the truth. When you're ready to finish what we started. I don't understand. You remember the compound, Sarah? The one where they held you? How could she forget? The smell of diesel and blood. The concrete floor. the voices speaking in rapid Pashto while they debated how to kill her. You thought they captured you because they discovered you were American intelligence, Reza said. That wasn't why. Then why? Because you saw something you weren't supposed to see. A shipment. Money and weapons moving through channels that shouldn't exist. His eyes locked onto hers. You didn't just uncover terrorists, Sarah. You uncovered the people supplying them. The people protecting them. Americans, Sarah. High-level officials working both sides. The world tilted. That's why they buried you, Reza continued. That's why they erased your service. Not because you were too violent or unstable, because you were too effective. You found the truth, and the truth was dangerous to very powerful people. Sarah's mind raced back through every detail of her mission. The faces, the transactions, the encrypted files she'd photographed and transmitted. Who knows about this? She asked. Very few. General Hale suspects some of it, but he doesn't have proof. Most of the evidence disappeared 3 years ago. Reza pressed the phone into her hand. But I kept copies. I've been gathering more. And now that you're back in the light, now that they've publicly acknowledged your existence again, we have a chance to expose them. Why now? Why wait 3 years? Because 3 years ago they would have killed us both and no one would have asked questions. But now? He smiled grimly. Now you're a decorated hero. A survivor. A woman the Pentagon just apologized to in front of witnesses. If something happens to you now, people will notice. Behind them, the auditorium doors opened. Voices spilled out. The ceremony was ending. I have to go, Reza said, backing away. Call me when you're ready. Or don't call and live your life. But Sarah? He paused. They're still out there. Still moving weapons. Still getting soldiers killed for profit. You're the only one who can stop them. Then he turned and walked away, disappearing between buildings like a ghost. Sarah stood alone in the parking lot, a medal pinned to her dress and a phone burning in her hand. Behind her, General Hale's voice called out, Captain Chen? Are you all right? She turned slowly. The general stood in the doorway, genuine concern on his face. Behind him, dozens of officers filed out, all watching her with new eyes, respect, curiosity. Some of them even smiled. 3 years ago, she'd been erased. Today, she'd been restored. But now she understood. The ceremony wasn't an ending, it was a beginning. And somewhere in the shadows, very dangerous people had just realized their mistake. Sarah forced a smile and walked back toward the general. I'm fine, sir, she said. Just needed some air. General Hale studied her face. He'd been reading people for 30 years. He knew she was lying, but he also knew when not to push. There's a reception in the officers' club, he said. You should come. People want to meet you. I appreciate that, sir, but I think I'll skip it. Sarah. He lowered his voice. I know the last 3 years have been hell. I know you have every right to hate me and everyone else involved in what happened to you. But you have allies now, people who fought to make this right. Don't shut them out. She looked at him carefully. Do you know why they really discharged me, General? His expression flickered. Just for a second. I know what the report said. That's not what I asked. A long silence stretched between them. Come to my office tomorrow, he finally said. 1400 hours. We'll talk privately. About what? About things I can't discuss in a parking lot. He glanced around, suddenly cautious. You're not the only one who's had questions, Sarah. You're just the first person who's been in a position to ask them out loud. Before she could respond, a young lieutenant approached. General Hale, sir? They're waiting for you at the reception. The general nodded, then looked back at Sarah. 1400. Don't be late, Captain. He walked away, leaving Sarah standing alone with a head full of questions and a phone she didn't trust. She waited until the crowd dispersed, then walked to the visitor parking lot where her old Honda sat. It was the same car she'd owned before her deployment. Before everything, she'd bought it back from a used car lot 6 months ago for $800. A decorated war hero driving a rust bucket. Honda. The irony wasn't lost on her. She sat in the driver's seat but didn't start the engine. Instead, she pulled out Reza's phone and stared at it. One contact. No name. Just a number. Her thumb hovered over the call button. 3 years ago, she'd been a soldier. She'd followed orders. Trusted the chain of command. Believed that the system, however flawed, ultimately served justice. Then the system had chewed her up and spit her out. Now a dead man was telling her that everything she'd suffered had been orchestrated by traitors wearing American flags on their shoulders. She wanted to believe Reza was lying, that he was paranoid or confused or working some angle she couldn't see, but deep down she knew he wasn't. She'd always known something was wrong. The interrogation after her extraction had been too aggressive, too personal. The questions hadn't been about confirming her intelligence. They'd been about finding out what else she knew, what she'd seen, what she might tell others. They'd been scared of her. Sarah put the phone in her pocket and started the car. She didn't go home. Home was a small apartment in Fayetteville, 40 minutes away. Instead, she drove to a diner off post, a place called Rosie's that served breakfast all day and asked no questions. She ordered coffee and sat in a back booth. Watching the door, old habits, the waitress, a woman in her 60s with kind eyes brought the coffee. "You need a menu, honey?" "Just the coffee." "Thank you." The waitress noticed the medal still pinned to Sarah's dress. "That's beautiful." "You in the service?" "Was." "Well, thank you for what you did." The woman smiled warmly and walked away. Sarah wrapped her hands around the coffee cup, letting the heat seep into her fingers. She'd been cold for 3 years. Not physically. Deeper than that. The kind of cold that came from being cut off from everything you'd ever been. The door opened. Sarah's hand instinctively moved toward her pocket, but it was just a trucker, heavy-set and tired, heading for the counter. She forced herself to relax. She was jumping at shadows. Then again, maybe shadows were exactly what she should be worried about. Sarah pulled out her personal phone and opened her contacts. There weren't many. Most of her friends had been Army. After the discharge, most of them had stopped calling. Not out of cruelty, just awkwardness. What do you say to someone who'd been erased? But there was one name that stood out. Lieutenant Commander Jessica Price, Navy Intelligence. They'd worked together on a joint task force 4 years ago, before Sarah's deep cover assignment. Jess was smart, connected, and most importantly, she'd been one of the few people who'd stayed in touch after everything fell apart. Sarah typed out a text. "Need to talk." "Secure line, important." The reply came within 30 seconds. "Call me in 1 hour. Use encryption." Sarah deleted both messages and put the phone away. She sipped her coffee and waited. 60 minutes later, she was sitting in her car in a grocery store parking lot, using an encrypted app to call Jessica. "Tell me you're okay," Jess said immediately. "I'm okay. Got a medal today, I heard. It's all over the internal networks. 4-star general personally presenting an award to a discharged officer? That's not normal, Sarah." "Nothing about this is normal." Sarah took a breath. "Jess, I need you to look into something for me." "Off the books? How far off the books?" "The kind that could end your career." A pause. "I'm listening." "During my last deployment, I reported intelligence on weapons and money moving through Taliban-controlled regions. Standard trafficking stuff. But what if it wasn't standard? What if some of those shipments were being facilitated by Americans? The silence on the other end lasted too long. "Jess, where is this coming from, Sarah?" "Someone reached out to me. Someone who was supposed to be dead. He claims I was burned because I got too close to something big." "Who's the source?" "A local asset from my operation. Reza Khan, the translator." "Sarah, his death was confirmed. I saw the report myself, so did I, but I saw him today." "In person," Jessica swore softly. "This is... okay. Let's think this through. If what you're saying is true, if there really is some kind of corruption at that level, you can't just go digging around. These people don't leave loose ends." "I know. And they sure as hell don't let loose ends walk around with medals pinned to their chest." Sarah's grip tightened on the phone. "You think I'm in danger?" "I think you've been in danger since the moment you came back from that operation. The only reason you're still alive is because killing you would have raised questions. But now that you're back in the spotlight..." Jessica's voice turned urgent. "Sarah, if there really are people who wanted you buried, giving you that medal just painted a giant target on you. You're visible now. You're a story, and stories can be silenced." A chill ran down Sarah's spine. "What do I do?" "First, you watch your back, constantly. Second, you don't trust anyone you don't absolutely have to. Third..." Jessica hesitated. "You need leverage, evidence, something concrete enough that if anything happens to you, it automatically goes public. Insurance. My source says he has evidence. Then get it. Copy it. Spread it around to multiple secure locations. Make sure the bad guys know that killing you won't kill the story. Sarah watched a mother push a shopping cart across the parking lot, a toddler giggling in the seat. Normal life. She'd almost forgotten what that looked like. Will you help me? Sarah asked. You even have to ask? Jessica's tone softened. You saved my life in Kandahar. I owe you everything. Whatever you need, whenever you need it, I'm there. Thank you. Just promise me you'll be careful. I will. Sarah ended the call and sat in the silence of her car. Then she pulled out Reza's phone and dialed the only number he answered on the first ring. I was hoping you'd call. Where's the evidence? Not something I can just email you. It's physical. Documents, photos, hard drives. Where? Richmond. There's a storage facility under a fake name. I'll text you the address. When? Tonight, midnight, come alone. He paused. And Sarah? Don't tell anyone where you're going. Not your friends. Not General Hale, no one. If there's a leak, you won't make it out of that facility alive. The line went dead. A text appeared seconds later, an address in Richmond. 2.5 hours away. Sarah stared at it. Every instinct screamed that this was a trap. That she was being led into an ambush. That Reza, if it even was Reza, was working for the very people he claimed to be exposing. But what if he wasn't? What if everything he said was true, and she was the only person who could stop it? Sarah looked down at the medal still pinned to her dress. The Defense Superior Service Medal, a symbol of honor, of sacrifice, of a system that had betrayed her. She started the car. She had 6 hours until midnight. Time enough to prepare. Time enough to say goodbye. Just in case. As she pulled out of the parking lot, a black SUV 3 rows back started. Its engine and followed at a careful distance. Sarah noticed it in her rearview mirror and smiled. Let them follow. Let them think she was just a broken soldier chasing ghosts. They'd learn soon enough. Sarah Chen had spent 14 months pretending to be someone else, buried deep in enemy territory with no backup and no way out. She'd survived then. She'd survive now. And this time, she wasn't going to disappear quietly. Sarah didn't try to lose the black SUV. Instead, she drove straight to a gun store off Highway 95, a place she'd been to twice since her discharge. The owner, a former Marine named Dale, recognized her immediately. Ms. Chen, he nodded as she walked in. What can I do for you? I need a Glock 19, 2 extra magazines, and a box of 9mm. Dale's eyebrows rose. That's a specific order. It's been a specific kind of day. He studied her face, then glanced out the window at the black SUV idling in the parking lot. You in some kind of trouble? The kind I can handle. She pulled out her credit card. But I need to handle it armed. Dale rang her up without another word. 10 minutes later, Sarah walked out with a weapon on her hip and ammunition in her jacket pocket. The SUV was still there. Good. She wanted them to see. Wanted them to know she wasn't running scared. Sarah drove home to her apartment, the SUV maintaining its distance. She parked, went inside, and immediately began preparations. She had 5 hours. First, she logged onto her laptop and created a dead man's switch, a file containing everything she knew, set to automatically send to 20 different news outlets, congressional offices, and military investigators if she didn't check in every 12 hours. The file didn't have evidence yet, but it had names, dates, questions that would demand answers. It was a start. Next, she changed clothes. Black cargo pants, dark shirt, boots with good tread. She wasn't going to a midnight meeting in a dress and heels. She checked the Glock, loaded it, chambered a round. Then she sat on her couch and waited. At 11 p.m., she left her apartment. The black SUV was parked across the street trying to look inconspicuous. Sarah walked right past it to her Honda. Let them follow her to Richmond. Let them think they had the advantage. The drive took 2 hours and 40 minutes. Sarah watched her mirrors the entire way. The SUV stayed back, professional and patient. Whoever was driving knew what they were doing. Richmond appeared through the darkness, city lights glowing against the night sky. Sarah followed Reza's directions to an industrial area on the east side, storage facilities, warehouses, everything closed and dark. The address led to a mid-sized storage complex called Secure Space. Sarah pulled into the empty parking lot. The black SUV drove past, then turned into a lot 2 blocks down. Sarah got out of her car. The night air was cool, silent except for distant traffic. Her hand rested on the Glock. A figure emerged from the shadows near Unit 247, Reza. "You came," he said. "You gave me a reason to." Sarah approached slowly. "The SUV that followed me here. Yours or theirs?" "I noticed it too. Not mine." Reza pulled out a key. "We need to move fast." He unlocked the storage unit and rolled up the metal door. Inside, illuminated by a single hanging bulb, were 3 filing boxes and 2 external hard drives. "This is everything," Reza said. Bank records showing payments from U.S. contractors to known Taliban facilitators, photographs of American officials meeting with weapons dealers, shipping manifests, communication logs. He pulled out a folder. "And this. This is the big one." Sarah took it. Inside were photographs. Clear, damning photographs. A U.S. State Department official shaking hands with a man Sarah recognized from intelligence briefings, a known arms trafficker. Another photo. The same official at a compound Sarah had infiltrated during her mission. A third photo. Money. Stacks of American currency in a room she remembered. The room where she'd been held captive. They weren't just looking the other way, Reza said quietly. They were partners, selling weapons to both sides, making millions while soldiers died. Sarah's hands shook with rage. "Who else knows about this?" "Just us now. The others who helped me gather this, they're all dead." His voice was flat. "Accidents, suicides. One guy had a heart attack at 32 years old." "Why are you still alive?" "Because I'm a ghost. Officially dead. They're not looking for me." He nodded toward the boxes. "Take it all, copy it. Spread it everywhere. Make it impossible to bury." Sarah started to reach for the nearest box. Then she heard it. Footsteps. Multiple people. "Moving fast, Reza, the lights went out." Sarah dropped and drew her Glock in one motion. Reza moved beside her, pulling his own weapon. "Sarah Chen." A voice called from the darkness, male, American. Authority dripping from every word. "Put down your weapon and come out. You're in violation of federal law." "What law?" Sarah shouted back. "Theft of classified materials. Conspiracy to leak state secrets. We have a warrant for your arrest." Sarah's mind raced. "Show me the warrant!" "Come out and we'll discuss it." "That's not how warrants work." Reza touched her arm. "Back door," he whispered. "Through the unit behind us," but Sarah was done running. She'd run 3 years ago. "Let them bury her. Let them win, not anymore. I know who you are," Sarah called out. "I know what you did. And I have proof." "You have stolen classified materials," the voice replied. "Materials you're not authorized to possess. You're making this worse for yourself." "Is that what you told the others? Before you killed them?" "Silence then. Last chance, Captain. Come out now or we come in." Sarah pulled out her phone. Hit record. Started a live stream to an account Jessica had set up for her. "My name is Captain Sarah Chen," she said clearly into the phone. "I'm at Secure Space Storage in Richmond, Virginia. There are armed men outside claiming to be federal agents, but they haven't shown identification or warrants. I'm a decorated war hero who was dishonorably erased for discovering that U.S. officials were selling weapons to terrorists. The evidence is in this storage unit. If something happens to me, it's not an accident. It's murder." She tagged every news outlet she could think of, then she waited. 5 seconds. 10. 30. The voice came back. But it was different now. Uncertain. "Turn off the camera." "Captain, no, you're making a mistake. I've made plenty." "This isn't one of them." More silence. Then, shockingly, the overhead lights came back on. 5 men stood outside the storage unit. They wore tactical gear but no identification. No badges, no agency markings. The one in front was older, gray-haired, with the bearing of someone used to giving orders. "You just ended your life," he said coldly. "You know that, right? Everything you could have been. Gone. My life ended 3 years ago when people like you threw me away." Sarah kept the phone recording. "The difference is, this time I'm taking you with me." The man's jaw tightened. "That evidence is classified. Releasing it is treason. Then arrest me, on camera, with proper warrants and lawyers and due process." Sarah smiled without warmth. "Or admit what you really are." Behind her, Reza started pulling hard drives from the boxes. "Sarah, we have 400 people watching your stream." 600 now, 1,000. The number kept climbing. The gray-haired man's phone rang. He answered, listened, his face darkening with every second. "Stand down," he finally said to his team. Sir, stand down. He looked at Sarah with pure hatred. You have no idea what you've done. The damage you've caused, I've caused. Sarah's voice rose. I'm not the one arming terrorists. I'm not the one who got American soldiers killed for profit. You think it's that simple? You think the world runs on black and white? He stepped closer. We were managing a complex situation, maintaining intelligence networks. Sometimes that requires murder, treason, selling out your own people. His hand moved toward his weapon. Sarah raised her Glock. Do it, please. Give me a reason. On camera. In front of 5,000 people, the number was actually higher now. 7,000. 10,000, someone in the chat posted. I just called the Richmond PD, they're sending units. Another. CNN is picking this up. Another. Holy shit, is that General Hale in the comments? Sarah glanced at the screen. It was. General Hale had written, Captain Chen, hold your position. Federal marshals are en route. Trust no one else. The gray-haired man saw it too. His expression shifted from anger to calculation. This isn't over, he said quietly. Yeah, Sarah replied. It's just getting started. He and his team backed away, melting into the darkness. 30 seconds later, Sarah heard vehicles starting, driving away. She kept the Glock raised until the sounds faded completely. Then finally, she lowered the weapon. Reza was grinning. You're insane. You know that? I learned from the best. She looked at the boxes of evidence. Help me load this into my car. We're taking it to the Washington Post. Not CNN? Washington Post broke Watergate. They'll know what to do with this. Sirens wailed in the distance. Real police this time. Sarah kept streaming until they arrived. Kept recording as she explained everything to the officers. Kept the camera on when federal marshals showed up 20 minutes later with actual warrants and identification. By sunrise, Sarah was in protective custody. By noon, the story was on every major news network. By evening, 3 State Department officials had resigned, and 3 days later, Sarah Chen stood in the Pentagon, wearing a proper uniform this time, as General Hale personally apologized on behalf of the United States military. You deserved better, he said. We all failed you. Yes, Sarah agreed. You did? What will you do now? Sarah thought about it. She'd been offered her rank back. Full reinstatement back pay. Apologies from people who destroyed her life. But she didn't want any of it. I'm going to testify, she said. At every hearing, every investigation, I'm going to make sure every single person involved in this goes to prison. That could take years. I've got time, General Hale smiled sadly. You're a good soldier, Sarah. No, she corrected. I'm something better. I'm a witness, and I'm not going away. She walked out of the Pentagon into bright sunshine. Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted questions. Sarah Chen, the woman who'd worn no uniform to a ceremony, who'd been buried and forgotten and thrown away, stood before them all, and she told the truth. 6 months later, Sarah stood in a small ceremony at Arlington National Cemetery. No cameras this time, no crowds, just a handful of people who mattered. Jessica Price, General Hale, and Reza Khan, alive and finally free to exist in the light. They were dedicating a memorial stone for the others. The sources and assets and whistleblowers who hadn't survived to see justice. They should have gotten medals too, Sarah said quietly. They're getting something better, Reza replied. They're getting remembered. Sarah touched the cold stone. Then she straightened, turned, and walked away. She had testimony to give in the morning, and she was just getting started.